the Walton Valley Community Television Studios in beautiful Green Beaverton, Oregon. We bring you the Conversations with Dr. Don show, and I can't see the monitor. It's behind camera one. When someone gets a chance, move it out where I can see it, please. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. Now, for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is that we've decided to talk about. However, tonight's show is different. It's quite different. It is a switch where the tables are turned on me and I am being interviewed by my supposed guest, my good friend David Delk. Am I right? Mm-hmm. The other two times where David interviewed me were in two one-hour shows titled A Video Memoir of a New Orleans Creole, Parts 1 and 2. And of course, tonight you're looking at Part 3, which were broadcast earlier and are available for viewing on my website at www.donbaham.com and clicking on favorite links. Tonight's show, the third and last in this series, is subtitled A New Orleans Creole's Awareness of Racial Differences and Experiences, and is a rather chronologically recalled report of instances of my unique experiences of racial differences and discrimination. I sincerely hope that my disclosures will add to your learning and experiencing of these things from your past or even in your present. And I'm not going to guarantee that I will be as even in my emotional appearance as David talks to me about these things, because there probably are some residual feelings associated with them, as you will see as the show unfolds. But it's now time to reverse roles and be the victim. I mean the guest. David, will you take over now?
Okay, I will take over. First, I want to thank you very much for allowing me to guest host and interview you, because I do feel like it's a real honor to do that. And so thank you so much. Thank you. I'm very glad to call you friend. So thank you. Okay.
We belong to a mutual admiration.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's start with talking about a little bit about who you are for people who have missed the other two programs, and just give us an idea when were you born, just as a starting.
I was born in the lower 9th Ward of New Orleans, Louisiana on December 26th, 1928.
Wow, that was a long time ago.
Not that long. Yes, it was a long time ago. Yeah, that's, and I remember it very well. No, I don't.
It was a dark and
gloomy and stormy
night, right? Okay, all right, yeah. And so tell us, New Orleans had a lot of different racial groups and ethnic groupings, so how did you fit in there?
Well, that was, as I remember as a kid, there was the white and the Creole, and then what we call the colored then. And strangely enough, we Creoles, who are mixed bloods, saw ourselves as different or better than the colored. And now they're called African American or black, and we're getting off there. Anyhow, if you want to know what a Louisiana Creole is, I am a Louisiana Creole, but I have a definition of Louisiana Creoles that I'd like to read now, and I can start now. Louisiana Creoles are people of varying mixtures of red, white, and black racial heritage, largely descended from the colonial white, European, slave black, African, and indigenous red, Native American races from the time before Louisiana became a possession of the United States through the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Unlike many other ethnic groups in the United States who are immigrants from other countries, Louisiana Creoles are a mixed race group that originated in Louisiana, USA, and are descended from American-born forebears. Having originated in Louisiana, some Louisiana Creoles have moved to other larger American cities and to a greater or lesser degree formed pockets of Louisiana-originated Creole groups and cultures. Louisiana Creoles have over time developed a unique culture and language derived mostly from the French, with minor contributions from other languages. This patois evolved in the 19th century and at that time was used by slaves and planters alike, and continues to be used today in some older Louisiana Creole groups. This Louisiana Creole unique culture also has a distinct relationship with food, nutrition, and ritual around food preparation and consumption. Louisiana Creole cuisine incorporates spices, ingredients, and condiments from the French, Italian, Spanish, African, and Native American cultures. The Louisiana Creole community is purely American in its diversity of interest and involvement in political, social, and other interests vital to our freedoms and way of life. Louisiana Creoles come in all physical presentation, including eye color, skin pigmentation, and hair grade. Probably the most significant characteristic of Louisiana Creoles, in addition to physical presentation, is a mindset that manifests itself in a quiet appreciation of their unique racial heritage and culture. You know a little more about what Creoles are besides what you see?
Right. Yes. All right. Very good. Yeah. I remember when you came back from Louisiana a year or so ago. You talked about the rainbow of colors.
Yeah.
Among the Creole people, and I thought that was a nice characterization.
Yeah.
Right.
And I also discovered down there. I finally discovered that the red part is Choctaw.
Oh, really?
All these years I never knew, but across Lake Pontchartrain, on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain, that's directly opposite New Orleans, which is on the south side of Lake Pontchartrain, which is where the family reunion was. And I was gone for 11 days. I got back about 3 or 4 days ago. And I discovered where my dad worked as a shipwright. And that's some more stories I'll tell you later on.
Okay.
I don't, it's just great memories.
Wonderful.
Great memories.
Great, good. So tell us a little bit about your religious preferences.
I was raised a conservative Catholic kid. I was an older boy, and became disenchanted with Catholicism as time went by. And I am now a humanist. I'm also a humanist minister who has the same privileges and responsibilities as other persons of the cloth, our clergy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a humanist now. That can be an atheist, an agnostic, or someone who doesn't believe in the hereafter or the supernatural or any of that stuff.
So you've dabbled and found a home in terms of religion?
I'm a-religious.
A-religious.
I think so.
Right, okay, great. Okay, yeah. And your education? You're obviously very well educated. I know that. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Man, I took it the hardest way. I dropped out of junior high and barely got it through elementary school. I was a very sickly kid, very skinny, and didn't attend classes very much. And I made it to junior high at Albert Ricker High School in New Orleans, and it was so boring and so disgusting and so scary because I was thrown in with all the colors, including the Creoles. And I found myself from an early stage in my life, I was more uncomfortable around all black people than I was around all white people. That's another story.
That's another story, yeah. We'll get to that.
But anyhow, I was disenchanted with high school, so I played hooky a lot and dropped out. And finally took a GED, later on was married, and in the process of having my children, and went to school at night for year after year and kept changing majors over and over again. And to bring that to an end, I finally settled in and got a bachelor's and a master's and a doctor of psychology in clinical psychology in San Diego at the United States International University, and practiced as a psychologist for many years in Southern California, and retired my practice some 20-some years ago and moved to Oregon.
A wise move.
Yeah, so Oregon is not that nice. Don't move. We don't move. It's wonderful.
All right, and you are currently married?
Yeah, my lovely wife, Pat Baham. I wonder what she's doing tonight. She's probably
She should be watching our TV.
Anyhow, this may be a live call-in show. Later on during the program, we'll put up a phone number in case you want to call in and comment about what we're saying and talking about here. Just in case, but toward the end of the show, we'll do that. Put that now.
Okay.
My
Children? Tell us about children.
5 grown daughters. The one's in Pennsylvania, and the others all in Southern California. And I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And don't ask me how many I lost count years ago.
As long as you remember all their names
My
and
daughters
birthdays.
are all beautiful, I promise you. Yeah.
Okay. And that was a screenshot of your daughters on the opening shot? Was
The
that
opening
right?
shot was...
I couldn't see it, so...
Yeah, those were the 5 daughters of my oldest brother, Carl, who died in the 40s.
Oh.
But he had 9 children, and he has 3 sons who are not on that opening picture, and 4 daughters. And as you can see later on after the break, we'll show you a picture of an extended Creole family to show you all the different shades and hues and complexions of Creoles. And that shows example of what can happen when you mix the 3 races randomly.
Yeah. So tell us about your political persuasions. I know you're pretty firmly set in the political spectrum.
I'm a Tea Partier.
A Tea Party or not, either you're lying.
I'm a left-wing radical progressive in the cut of Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn. And I think if Martin Luther King were alive today, he would see himself as a radical leftist. Again, another story.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah. And so tell us about membership in other groups, civic groups, political
groups. I have a collection of business cards for the different organizations that I hold memberships in, from the ACLU, Common Cause, Public Citizen, and the Alliance for Democracy, and a whole bunch of leftist, liberal organizations, because this is my way of doing what I can to make this country be what the founding fathers intended it to be, a real democracy for ordinary citizens like us. Yeah.
Right.
And we got to fight.
Right, as opposed to a democracy of corporations.
Are you grinding your axe now, Dave?
I am.
Agreed.
All right, good, yeah.
I guess, he and I have the same political stripe. Yeah.
All right. Someone from your past that, or not necessarily from your, someone that you have admired.
Jesus Christ, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King. And sometimes my fellow humanists look at me kind of askance when I say Jesus Christ. Well, I look at Jesus Christ as an extraordinary human being. He may or may not have been the Son of God, but it doesn't matter. Apparently, from what I've read, whether it's a fallacy, a fantasy, or a joke, but how he lived his life was a model for loving your neighbor and being my model, KFC, kind, friendly, and charitable.
Oh, yeah.
And Martin Luther King, he was killed because he was pursuing that idea of loving beyond the limits of corporations and controls of the super rich. And that's why he was killed. But that's another story.
Yeah, yeah. So someone alive that you admire.
Oh, we just lost Howard Zinn. Noam Chomsky, of course. Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont. He is courageous. Hugo Chavez of Venezuela, I admire hugely.
All right.
And Fidel is alive and well. And a brief digression, Fidel Castro is back now in the public talking again. And he was disabled for years with an intestinal sort of a thing. And I'm wondering if he had the same thing that I had that disabled me about 18 months ago when I had the major surgery at the VA, because that's another story.
That's another story. Yeah, there's lots of stories. We'll do this again. Okay, all right, yeah. So you've been retired for a number of years. When did you retire, and what are you kind of doing now?
I retired from my psychologist practice, 20 few years ago, and moved up here to Oregon, to Portland, and took it easy and wandered around for a couple years, and stumbled upon community television and fell in love with it and decided, here's a chance to grind my axe as I practice my humanism and have people from all political stripes on my show and interview them about what's important in their life. So I spend a lot of time preparing for my conversations with Dr. Don shows. And then occasionally I'll do I'll record a conference or something that I broadcast on my show here. And my humanist minister activities, I belong to Senior Studies Institute. That's an organization sponsored by Portland Community College where seniors get together and talk about current events and whatever. And the Humanists of Greater Portland, I attend regular Sunday morning sessions there, and the Alliance for Democracy meetings that are terrible. No, that's
that's
you're
okay.
the president of us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff, and I like to do movies and plays now and then.
Okay, all right.
There's not enough time in the day.
Yeah, you keep more than busy enough for a couple of people.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I kind of got out of order because I wanted to ask you about your work life, and you know, I think when you first started working, you were working for $2.50 a week.
A week, yes. And you are out of order, by the way.
Yes, right. Yes. Oh, that was, excuse me.
That was my first job. I was a delivery boy for a neighborhood grocery store. $2.50 a week, 6 days a week, and 10 hours a day.
Wow.
But they gave me a sandwich for lunch.
The bonuses. We live for bonuses, huh?
And then I got finally a few jobs until I finally got into aerospace as a $1.10 an hour mechanic, C-level mechanic, bucking rivets, making floor panels for T-28 trainers for the Air Force. And enjoyed that career and was promoted there and moved up the ladder in my working class to become a checkout mechanic for F-86s and F-100s. I love that very much. That's another story too. And he got married and decided a lot went on between there and from the time I went back to school in my later years and started my schooling in psychology and did a lot of extra learning and workshops and stuff to learn how to be a shrink rather than just the academic knowledge. Enjoy that very much. And I still see a few clients in an office in my home and teach them transactional analysis, how to look at themselves without having to go through the insurance companies. That's another story. And I do Socrates Cafe, which is a gathering of fellow curious people just concerned about the important questions in life, like Socrates was. And we explore those questions and come up with answers, and sometimes we don't. We have a good time doing that. Just the camaraderie and the getting together of like-minded people who are weird.
Yeah, and do you have little drinks of hemlock?
No.
No hemlock? Okay, good. All right, good. So tell us a little bit about your views of America today and how it acts in the world.
I'm very afraid of what's going on with America today. I think the empire is on a downward spiral. I'm not alone. There are some people other than radical leftists who feel the same way that I do about it because of our behavior on the world scene, American exceptionalism, and America being dominated by the corporate elite. And there's a class warfare going on around the world in America too. It's not felt so much in America because we're so rich and we have such abundance. But there's so many indications that America as an empire is on the downward side. But it can be recovered if we just keep battling and fighting and elect more people to the Congress like Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
He's also a socialist.
Yes, he is. Right.
Avowed socialist.
Right.
Like
Yes.
Yes,
an avowed socialist.
Avowed. Thank you.
Right, yeah. So you said several things there that we could follow up on and have hour-long conversations, but we'll postpone those until some other time. So let's get to the main topic, which.
Okay. As in, I prepared some notes to sort of prompt us, and awareness of racial differences and experiences, and there's about 5 categories, those things that I remember from childhood and from my adolescence and from my 3 years and 2 days in the U.S. Army, and then in my working life and then in other adult life. And we have to have 4 hours to cover these, but we'll start.
Yes, yeah, but let's do it. And let's talk fast and and see what we can go through. So,
Okay.
tell us about the childhood. When did you first become aware of race as being a factor?
It's really funny, in the Ninth Ward, the upper Ninth Ward, which wasn't as poor as the lower Ninth Ward, I remember a summer day, and I was playing in the front yard. I must have been 4, about that, and there was a white man on the porch talking to my mom, I guess. And we didn't have white men down there. Occasionally there were Creole men, and occasionally a black person. There was a distinction then, but I never saw a white man. And this guy had a suit on, and they were talking, and I was wondering, what are they talking about? And I think I heard my name mentioned, and I was curious about what they were talking about, and I was kind of scared. I'm not sure what I was scared of, but there was something unusual going on there. And that was my first awareness of differences in race and color, beyond just hearing them talk about it. Yeah, so that was a bit scary.
And then your sisters helped your awareness.
Well, Papa would not have his daughters work in the white man's house as servants and cooks and that sort of thing. We were above that because we were Creoles. But a few of my sisters worked in garment factories, sewing. And occasionally I'd hear remarks about their Jew bosses, but not in a particularly derogatory way, but the fact that they were Jews. And that seemed kind of awkward, but left me with a questioning. What's that about? Why is there a difference? But I got the impression that Jews ran factories and were in charge of the businesses, but it didn't have any significance for me at that time other than that, just a curiosity and a questioning.
Okay. And a sense of anger about white people in general, was that developing?
I don't know where the root of that came from, but I got the impression early on that I was not to aggravate or anger a white person, and it was pretty damn strong, pardon my language. They're, generally speaking, white people just behaved in a rather aloof fashion, but not a direct personal attack or insult to me, person to person. But there was just this wariness and deep down fear. Don't anger or make a white person mad, because who knows what the heck can happen.
Right,
And that happened early on. That lasted a whole lot of years.
Okay, all right. And so these feelings are all still in childhood, and then you became a teenager and went into adolescence.
Yeah, but another bit more about the childhood thing.
Okay,
Occasionally, today even, I'll meet a white person, a white man, who something about him, he sounds like a redneck from Georgia, Mississippi, and he has a bit of a twang in his voice like that. And I kind of get wary, so the residuals of what it sounds, somebody that reminds me of those people that I was afraid of when I was a kid. And even today I'll have this wariness. I gotta watch myself and be friendly with this guy, because he, never mind.
Yeah, right. So the little bit of that defensive-ness, just, you don't really get over it.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to teach our children, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, right, yeah. So tell us about becoming an adolescent.
Oh boy. We moved up to the 7th Ward, and my playmates, I guess I must have been 11 or 12 or so, and we were still poor. It was the Depression, and I used to go up to the grocery store a couple blocks from my house and get stale bread, 2 loaves for a nickel. And I was coming back with bread, and then 5 or 6 of my cohorts, kids about my age, stopped me by the elementary school and started, they selected me to be the one that they're going to pick on. And they started treating me as though I was a girl. and they were going to sexually assault me. And of course I laughed at them, but they got more and more serious, and they even held me down and got my pants down around my knees. And at this point in time, I thought they were really going to do it. This was in the broad daylight.
Wow.
And the bread was all over the ground, the package broke up and everything else, and I just was crying. And then they finally relented and let me go. And I was trying to recover the bread and go back home in tears, and because we only had a nickel for 2 loaves of bread. And abject terror.
Yeah.
Childhood.
Yeah.
Lessons. I'm not sure what that has to do with race.
But it was significant.
Well, it's significant. It produces a horrible feeling. Yeah.
And tell us about Bobby Roberts and wrestling.
Bobby Roberts was the son of Doc Roberts, who had the drugstore on the corner. And he was the white son who, in World War II, he went into the Navy and came home. But then Patat he wasn't Creole, Patat was black, and Patat was in the Navy before Pearl Harbor, but he went in at about 14. But he and Bobby Roberts had something in common, and they would wrestle and fight. A black guy and a pure white guy. And I was nervous as heck, but they played like heck, and everybody accepted it. But it still was exciting and scary to me. The racial differences in these white guy and black guy wrestling and fighting and throwing each other on the ground. Yeah. I got the high sign that it's
time for a break.
Take a break.
Okay.
So, let me say a few words. So it's time for a break now for about 4 minutes. We're going to put up on the screen a few panels that show information that you may want to make note of during the break. You may want to get a pencil, a pen, and paper now. Let me tell you about the Dr. Don Show broadcast schedule. For you viewers who live in the Washington County part of the Portland, Oregon metro area, Conversations with Dr. Don shows are broadcast 7 times each week. Typically, a new show is first aired on a Tuesday and is rebroadcast on the following Friday through Monday. You can get Conversations with Dr. Don on the internet. Tell your friends to watch Dr. Don shows on the internet anytime by going to my website at www.donbaham.com and clicking on favorite links. You can tune in to our occasional live call-in show, which may be tonight. Periodically, our show is recorded live so that you viewers in the Portland, Oregon metro area can call in and give us your say on whatever it is that we're talking about during the show. The next live call-in show will be on Thursday, September 30th at 8 p.m. in the Portland, Oregon metro area on Comcast Channel 11, Channel 22 of that outfit that replaced Verizon, Frontier, I guess. I didn't change mine. Now, I want to tell you about 2 ongoing Socrates Cafe meetings going on in Portland, Oregon on the west side of the Willamette River. Socrates Cafe meetings are regular gatherings of individuals curious about the important questions about life that most of us are too busy to ask because we are too busy in our ongoing existence to take the time to ask. The participants engage in dialogue using the Socratic method toward finding answers and learning from each other. The locations of these meetings are going to be up on the screen for you to make note of. Now let's take that brief break for about 4 minutes and then we'll be back. Mike. Thanks for staying tuned. And now we're going to show you a picture of an extended Creole family now. I think we'll bring that up and show you what an extended Creole family looks like. Can we bring that up there? And this was taken a few years ago. This is my oldest brother's kids and their extended family. If you notice, there's a whole variation of shades and colors and hue and all sorts of things. I just thought you'd get an idea of seeing a picture of a Creole, New Orleans Creole family. Okay, thank you. For you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour stand-alone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there, and we bypassed that pretty much the first time because this is not that kind of a show. This is another show where David is interviewing me. Okay, tonight's show, the third and last in this series, is subtitled New Orleans Creole's Awareness of Racial Differences and Experiences, and is a rather chronologically recalled report of instances of my unique experiences of racial differences and discrimination. I sincerely hope that my disclosures will add to your learning and experiencing of these things from your past or even in your present. Now let's get back to the interview. And further on, we're going to open the phones up, and you can call in and comment or ask a question about what's going on so far with David and I. And I'm discovering as we're going along in the show that we need 6 hours, David. This is not going to be good enough.
Yes, well, I'll be here for all 6 hours, so that will be fine. So you left it off at, we were talking about probably when you were in junior high school.
Yeah.
So you were kind of uncomfortable in junior high school.
Yeah. I felt very uncomfortable, and my first sense of sexual feelings occurred in junior high school. A guy named George and I got in a bit of an argument. The next thing you know, he socked me and knocked me out.
Oh.
Bing, and the next thing I know, I vaguely remember crashing to the floor, and then I felt something soft on my cheek. And there's a woman's PT instructor, and she's cradling my head, and she's, "Oh, you're okay." And her perfume and her breast against my cheek says, "What is this? Hit me again, somebody." That was my first awareness of sexual feelings. And I fell in love with her, right? It was my first love.
Your first love, right.
What was I, about 14 or 15 years old or something?
Yeah.
But that was a memory, and at first, yeah.
And then when we were talking earlier, you talked about skipping a lot of high school. In fact, you didn't graduate, as I recall.
Yeah, because I was just horribly, I sensed there was something wrong with the schools we went to. The junior high school I went to, the building was crumbling, and even in the elementary school, the books we had were handed down, and there weren't enough books to go around to every student, and they were marked up because they were from the white schools. I experienced that as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
But then in junior high, there were 4 buildings in this 4-acre plot or something, and 2 of them, we could use the first and second floor on those buildings, but the other floors were condemned. This is what black and Creole people had to put up with.
Yeah.
So then we transferred to Booker T. Washington High School, which I learned later on was more like a trade school. They taught brick masonry and car repair and painting and that kind of stuff. And I didn't know there was something going on here. Why wasn't there stuff that I saw in the movies about kids going to school? I didn't want to learn to be a brick mason. My 4 brothers were all carpenters, like Papa. They were all tradespeople. And I'm not going to be that. I'm going to be something different, and my mind worked differently. So I ditched there and didn't go to school there, and just finally dropped out and went to work on the milk truck delivering milk, and finally volunteered for the military.
Okay.
To get away from, there was something going on, get away from that.
Yeah. And of course this was all part of that separate but equal, which we all understand now was separate and very unequal.
What was amazing is that I just sensed there was something horribly wrong. I had more to be treated like a regular human being, or like working on the milk truck.
Mm-hmm.
Our route was delivering milk to homes, for the most part, and these wealthy homes in the Garden District of New Orleans. And we drove by some of the high schools and the universities where the white kids were going to school. And they were all in their uniforms and so nice and neat and pretty and organized and everything, and nothing like the little black and Creole kids I saw going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I longed to be like that. Longed,
Yeah.
and resented. But still, there was this general resentment. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I sensed there was something crooked here.
Yeah. Yeah. So you
The Army?
eventually went to the Army, but you tried other ways.
The fun thing about the Army was that I volunteered. I tried first for the Marines because my brother was a Marine, and they didn't want me. And I tried for the Navy, and they didn't want me. And reluctantly, I volunteered for the Army, my last resort, because I had to get out of New Orleans. So at the induction place, they called my name with a group of guys going to this training base, and they were all white. But then there were 3 other guys, and myself made the 4th guy, and 2 of these other guys were Creole, but they were with the guys going to this other training base, which was in South Carolina, which were all the blacks were taking basic training. So I felt uneasy with going with the whites, and so I went to the desk where the master sergeant was. I says, I think there's something wrong. I think I should be going with my friends over here. I didn't know them, but I knew 2 of them were Creole, and 1 guy was black, Yancey Brown. And this sergeant, his face turned beet red. That kind of a mistake, mistaking me for a white person.
Oh, that will never do.
So I went to basic training in Columbia, South Carolina, Fort Jackson, and that was an experience and a half. The first time thrown together for basic training with a group of black, at that time, very poor black people. And I sound like a classist or something, but I was very uncomfortable. And it wasn't, because all my life as a kid was these Creoles who thought they were better than black people. So it was horrible in basic training, and I got through that. And that's enough of that story.
Yeah. So tell us about when you were in the Army itself. Then how did you associate with other people, and what happened on when you weren't on duty in your social life?
Service clubs. The service clubs are still in operation like they were in actually in World War II, but I'm a World War II vet because I got in within a certain calendar period when the war was declared officially over, but they still had all the USO shows and the service clubs that they did during World War II, actually. And there's a Golden Dragon Service Club was in Yokohama where all races gathered, and I made white and Hispanic acquaintances as friends rather than the blacks, because they assigned me to a trucking company in Yokohama when I left the replacement depot, first got overseas, and I told them this didn't feel right, so they didn't allow me to take part in that. They moved me over to a medical outfit because I volunteered for the medics. But
was the medical unit, was that black or white, or did they divide that up? They divided everything up.
Yeah, divided everything up. But it seems that the troops who were in medical unit, the blacks who were in medical units or headquarters company had higher IQs, generally speaking. So they figured they couldn't put me in a white outfit because I already changed once. So they sent me to
you were labeled.
I didn't know I had a high IQ. But I was brighter than the average bear, not as smart as you are. But that was quite an experience. And this whole thing about race permeated my whole life in the military. And I found I made friends with whites and Hispanics because it seemed easier and wasn't so scary for me. And the White Service Club in Yokohama, where all the white troops gathered, I'd go over there sometimes, but anyhow, I
so you
wasn't happy in the military.
Yeah, and you had an encounter with a drunk. soldier.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what a pro station is?
No, I have no idea.
Prophylactic station. That's when if you had sexual activity in town, you stopped at a pro station. It was maintained by the medical operations, and there was a prophylactic chemical you used to ward off contracting of venereal disease. But then I stopped in to say hello to my friend on duty who was managing this pro station, and then this guy named Walker was taking treatment, and he was talking to his buddy in the next stall about whitey and crackers and just really racist stuff. And my white friend was with me, and I was embarrassed. So I said something like, hey, cool it, you know? I mean, let's... So he didn't forget that. So months later, they caught me down in Chinatown, him and his buddies, and they beat the crap out of me.
Wow.
I had a bloody nose, and there's an instance of racism against me by black truck drivers. Yeah, that's enough of that one.
Yeah, so it was easy to see that you didn't really fit in any world. You didn't fit in the world that the larger society wanted you to put into, and you weren't really able to fit in where you wanted to fit in.
No. That's why I felt so good for 11 days, and I was down in New Orleans again, hanging out with Creoles.
Yeah,
and I'm embarrassed about being aware of my own prejudice from all directions.
Right.
See, you can tell this is affecting me emotionally. I'm not so gabby anymore, so keep going.
Okay, all right, yeah. But you had some good times. Jazz.
Yeah. Oh, this is my fun days when we were doing some drugs that were only available in Japan, and there was no marijuana. We used to dry out anything we could find that looked like it. Maybe marijuana, and smoked it. Didn't do any good. But there was heroin and other stuff, heavy-duty stuff, that I dabbled with. And Bobby Ayala was an Hispanic guy, and he was from L.A., and we became friends, and we'd get stoned with this heavy-duty drugs and hang out in the music room upstairs, and those are marvelous times. I'm reliving it. Don't do drugs out there.
That's not the message, right?
Days,
Right, yeah. So you left the Army, you moved to Wilna,
my sister.
Oh, yes, your sister, that's right. Okay, and that was in Los Angeles?
Yeah, when I got out of the Army, I came to L.A. rather than go back to New Orleans because I knew I couldn't go back to New Orleans ever. And Wilna's husband, Jimmy, and he's dead now. Wilna's incidentally 97 years old and living in a home in Los Angeles. But Jimmy said to Wilna, well, this boy's been overseas and he needs to just relax and unwind. So he gave me keys to the second car, and he said, you're not work for 6 months, and here's an allowance, because I'd burned all my money as I got discharged and just blew it. And he treated me better than a brother would, or whatever. And those were some good times. Jimmy was a kind and gentle man. So those are some good times. See,
Great, good. Yes, they're good times, sure, yeah. And so you got through your 6 months of paid vacation, and you went to work for North American Aviation in L.A.
Yeah, that's when I was working on airplanes and having a good time doing that. But I experienced the workforce was nominally integrated, and I was always looked at as something else. As I've gotten older, the black heritage shows more, but I was even nowadays I look like I'm from the Middle East or Hispanic even sometimes, but I was more easily taken for something else, so to speak, then. So I had mixed feelings of relief at not being treated as Negro, and I felt guilty at passing by default. So I was scheduled to be promoted to hydraulic checkout mechanic. That was extremely difficult because they didn't want to see me promoted because of my race. But my boss decided, he was a white man, he decided we would take on anything that the company threw at me, and they would arrange for me to be tested and get this promotion.
Uh-huh.
So it was a 4-hour oral examination by this bigwig, and I made 99.60-something% on. I studied, and this Charlie Zell said, no matter what it takes, you don't work on the line, you go into my office and study and study and study, and we'll beat these so-and-sos. And we did.
All right.
So there's an instance of anger. Now, in that same group, I have a note here saying Longshore and Liza and Rastus. So I was with the crew working on aircraft, and Longshore was the lead man's name. This is before I became a checkout mechanic. And Longshore liked to tell Liza and Rastus jokes. You know what those are?
Nope.
Racist jokes that the old Southern white boys tell to each other. Liza's the negress. And Rastus is the Yazda boss guy.
Oh, okay.
And it's just horrible, those jokes. But Longshore would tell these jokes at break time, and most of the members of the crew would just laugh, and not just kind of laugh a little bit. But there was one white guy who knew that I wasn't white, and he was so damn uncomfortable because I wouldn't say anything. And finally one day I said to Longshore, when he and I were alone, I says, "Do you know who I am and what I am?" And he was so apologetic. He was so sorrowful. He's living a life of racism and don't even know he's talking to one.
Yeah, right. Right.
But there's an example of what that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I had just. Well, never mind. We're not talking about me, so that's fine.
Oh, one more about that story.
Yeah.
Evidence of racism. One Monday morning, I came to work. We were working in the hangar then, and my whole department had shipped out. They had managed to keep a secret from me for weeks. They had prepared to move the entire department to France to modify a bunch of aircraft at an Air Force base, but they didn't want to take me because I was the only black, and they didn't want me to go with them for a number of reasons. And the hangar was empty. So I went to the hangar next door, and the supervisor was waiting. He says, "Come on." He says, "I'll put you into my department." And I worked like a dog, but talk about being crushed.
Oh, yeah.
The racism. Another time they called me in to be given a field service assignment because I was so bright and I knew so much about the airplane, to be a field service representative for the company and go to the Air Force bases around the world and teach the Air Force people about the airplane. But then when I got into this interview, they looked at me and they made a mistake. Because on the time card, there's a -05, 04, and 03, -05 meant Negro. But they didn't notice that. Based on my record, my score on the hydraulic checkout examination, I was really bright.
And no black person could be so.
That's right. They made a mistake. So they danced and tried everything in the world to back out of this. And finally, they says, "You understand." Well, I left work and I got drunk. That hurt.
Yeah.
So there's another instance of racism.
And this would be in the early 50s?
This was probably in the late 50s.
Late 50s, wow.
Yeah. Then I was assigned to... Oh, I got to go back and tell you about... I went to New Orleans, and I had a 49 Ford, and I had my 5 daughters in the car, and my wife, Juanita, my first wife, and we were driving back from New Orleans to Los Angeles. This must have been in the early 60s, and it was hot as heck, and we had an evaporative cooler hanging on the window, and we ran out of water, so we pulled into a gas station in a remote part of Texas, and I got out and had my water bottle, so I went up. It was deserted, nobody was there but just the attendant, and I asked him, "Can I get some water?" And there was a cooler where the water was refrigerated, and then there was a little plastic hose where you put it in there and then you could fill your bottle with it. So I asked him if I could get some water, and he says, "Yeah." So as I started filling my bottle, he came out and he grabbed the plastic tube and snatched it. He says, "You don't need no water." And I'm looking back, and there's my babies in the car thirsty. They're roasting, and this. But then when he snatched the hose from me, he then went into the office of the gas station. But then there's a back room in the gas station, and I followed him. And I couldn't find him, and nobody else around. So he must have been in the back room, and I smelled it. I knew he was waiting for me to go into that front room and go to the back room to find him, and he was going to blast me away.
Really? Oh, wow.
So I backed out. I experienced this. Turned, and my kids are looking, "What's going on, Daddy?" And I said, "Oh, nothing." And I quietly got back in the car and drove away.
Wow.
There's an experience of racism.
Wow. That's...
And nowadays I calibrate myself and see if at some point I'm behaving in a racist fashion or acting out some of this crap I learned early on, because racism comes from all directions, and everyone, practically everyone, has some degree of racism, whether they acknowledge it or not.
Yeah, yeah.
So, don't
wow, that's a powerful statement. Wow. Okay. Yeah,
so those are some examples of my experiences of racism and discrimination and my own racist beliefs and tendencies. And I'm still working on becoming the kind of a person that I think Jesus was, and Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and being a loving human being.
And that's the way I experience you always.
You think so?
I do. Yes. I do.
So it looks like it's time for us to stop. Keep those pens and pencils handy, because you may want to jot down something that we'll show you in the closing credits. Thanks for watching. I invite you to give us feedback, both positive and negative, about any aspect of the show, and I mean it helps us to give you a better show. My email address is friendlydon@aol.com. My guest email address was up on the screen during the show. When you write Dr. Don, let me know if it's okay to read your email on the air. I have a few public service announcements that I want to read. First, I want to tell you about the Alliance for Democracy. That's an organization I belong to. And David, say a few words about the Alliance for Democracy, because you're president.
It's a national organization with a Portland chapter, which is dedicated toward ending corporate domination of, you fill in the blank.
Domination of the society, the culture, and the world. And then we'll put there's the Portland chapter of the Alliance for Democracy. Let's go back to that one, where you can talk to David Delk on the phone besides here. And come join us at our twice-a-month meetings and hear what we're about. They're really a very good organization. So let's talk about the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. And I had the current issue of an ACLU publication where they listed the names of the contributors, and I'm in the category of from $250 to $400. I want you to know I'm a dues-paying member of the ACLU. That's the national office. And the ACLU wants to know if you think you've been stopped because of racial profiling, particularly if you're in Arizona watching this. The ACLU wants to know about it if you think some overeager law enforcement has decided to stop you because of how you look rather than for some legitimate reason. And I'm not anti-law enforcement by any stretch of the imagination. How about the American Humanist Association? As you know, I'm a humanist minister. The AHA is a wonderful organization as an alternative to organized religion. We have a Portland chapter. We meet every Sunday morning like regular church folk, and we have speakers and all kinds of interesting stuff going on. Okay, what am I going to say now to finish this off as I turn this page? So it's time to say goodnight. Before I say goodnight, I want to say thank you to my new crew member, Doug, and Jimmy Mowgli, a fellow producer here who came in to help out because we're in a bind. And of course, our wonderful directors, Steve and Ted. Remember KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC, kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you too. And you. and you Doug, and you Jimmy, and you Ted, and you Steve.